Ghost Talkers Podcast, the show dedicated to unsolved history and paranormal mystery. Each week, we delve into something new, from true ghost stories to conversations with psychics, authors, historians, and the dead. If you're scared right now, it's probably because you just listened to Ghost Talkers Podcast.
Hello and welcome. I'm investigative medium Laine Crosby, here with my co-host, Ghost of Gettysburg author and historian Mark Nesbitt, and you're listening to Ghost Talkers on theghostchannel.tv. We are excited to have with us today Charlie Adams, and let me tell you a little bit about this gifted writer. He's a researcher of the paranormal and author of 31 books on ghosts, haunted places, shipwrecks, and baseball. He has also appeared on the History Channel's Haunted America New York and Haunted America Philadelphia programs and has served as consultant and on-air expert for programs on hauntings and ghosts on the Learning Channel, MTV, and the Travel Channel. He's produced, written, and conducted ghost tours in Lancaster County, Reading, and Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, Cape May, New Jersey, and Greenwich Village, as well as New York City. He is a gifted storyteller, as you will soon hear, and Charlie enjoys singing and has been in a rock band since high school. He's also from Berks County, Pennsylvania. You can find his books at ExeterHouseBooks.com. Welcome, Charlie.
I'm glad to be here. And, you said someone described, somewhere I just read myself being described as a ghost adventurer, which I kind of like.
I like that.
As opposed to the researcher and investigator, because 35 years I've been doing this, and I when I read that, I thought that's exactly what I am doing. All of this is an adventure to me, and so it's so neat to be a part of this.
Plus an adventure. I mean, it seems like you should have a Indiana Jones hat or something.
I don't go that far, but it is an adventure, as you know, Mark.
Sure.
You explore not only the paranormal aspects of all of this, but the historical, the personal, the emotional aspects, and that's one thing I try to do, and I think you do, I know you do, Mark, and anyone who's serious about this has to include all of those elements for a good final product being the ghost story, the boo of all of it, and there's a lot of depth to this.
Well, it's also interesting because there are so many people that are getting into this field as kind of like a hobby, but I think that's what kind of differentiates you and hopefully me, is that we sort of are looking at this all philosophically, that there's much more to this than just going out and getting pictures of orbs or a little bit of static that might be EVP. And I think you have that same philosophy as you just said.
I certainly do. I respect that. I find that certainly I would say the fun part of it and the conclusive part of it, if those conclusions are to be trusted and to be at all respected, and sometimes they are, sometimes they're not, as far as I'm concerned. But what always behind any of those, I mean, those hobbyists or researchers or investigators would not have been drawn to a particular place without some sort of a story being there, that leads them there.
And you may very well have written the story that
you
got
or
them
I,
into it.
sure,
Yeah.
and you and I, we've been doing it so long. Sometimes the stories come back and bite you in the butt, where the 16 people were murdered in this hotel here in wherever. And I read it somewhere. Well, and I know I've done the only story about it,
Right.
and maybe 2 people died of natural causes there. But all of a sudden, it becomes a Lizzie Borden. It becomes it falls out of story into folklore, and then into legend, and then into myth.
Right.
Sometimes.
Right. I gotta ask. It's obligatory. They always ask me, how'd you get started in it, Charlie?
My first experience, I grew up in Berks County, Pennsylvania. There's 2 spook lanes, a hex highway, Bloody Springs, Witches Hill, a haunted castle on Spook Lane. So that was the foundation. That was the background for all of it. So the curiosity was always there, the old Pennsylvania Dutch traditions and superstitions. Then I guess I really got kick-started into it when I had my own first experience with a ghost. And I was in the Navy at the time, about 19 years old.
What was that?
Well, I was aboard an aircraft carrier. Excuse me, a little horsey going thing. Aboard an aircraft carrier in 1967. 40 years now since I've started doing this. Standing guard duty in the bowels in the middle of the ship in a compartment where I and 60 other guys slept, when we were not standing duty. And one of my duties was just to stand there when everybody's out working in the middle of the ocean. We're in a cruise. And there's obviously there's not going to be any burglars coming around or breaking and entering going on. I just kind of stood there and tried to stay awake in the midnight to 6 a.m. shift. But all of a sudden, I heard a hatch open, and it's a very distinct sound of a hatch opening on the ship. And then I heard footsteps, and I heard just a general chaotic sounds that could have been attributed, and I attributed them to anywhere else but there. It's a large metal ship, so sounds could be coming from up above or down below or whatever. But I knew they weren't. They were coming from within that room, but not from within that time. I knew what I was hearing. Mm-hmm. And then I heard it just kind of in a Doppler effect pass by me, and then I heard another hatch open at the other end of the compartment and slam shut. All echoing in time, if I can say that almost dramatically, but that's exactly what it was like. I just stood there marveling at this. What the heck is all of this? Must be either my imagination or somewhere else in the ship. The next morning I had to report whatever might have happened in my watch. And like a moron, I reported that. And I was taken to the chaplain's office. My lieutenant was understandable. He said, I want you to tell it to somebody else. He took me to the chaplain's office. At this point, I think I'm getting drilled out of the Navy for being a nutcase. Chaplain closed the door. He asked me to tell the story, and I told him. He said, well, you're about the fourth guy to tell me the same story. Oh, my. Same place. And when I took over as chaplain, the previous chaplain told me to expect those kinds of stories from that particular compartment. Turns out, he showed me pictures then, 1943 or 43, I think, Japanese kamikaze plane hit that ship, drilled into the flight deck, the hangar deck, and into that compartment where I believe 21 men were killed. Oh, my. And that, when that absolute fact attached to my experience, attached to the sort of the legend of those others before me who have heard that and felt that same thing, then I had, even as a kid with no interest at all in ghost stories, I had, though, a classic ghost story. And as we say in Berks County, it made you wonder. It just made me wonder. And from that point on, I've been wondering about all of this.
What ship was it?
It's a USS Essex, ESSEX.
Do you write about your own investigations as well?
Oh, certainly, yeah. That's the core of what I do. I would say in any book I publish, 60% are probably are stories that I've had a real hand in. I've gone to and lived with the story. But admittedly, 40% are just they say stories. They're just stories that people have told me, and I take it from there and just retell that story. But that's a tradition that's ancient. Nothing to be ashamed of.
Oh, no, absolutely not. Right. Do you work with an investigative team?
No. They come in my wake. They follow in my wake as they follow in your wake, Mark Nesbitt. And no, I'm not a big fan of investigative teams. I come more from when I say the psychic end of things, I don't proclaim to be a psychic, a medium. I'm sensitive to the things I can detect and feel certain things. So I rely on that, and I rely on those pegs I told you about, the fact that something happened in this room right where we're sitting right now. Right. A woman was bludgeoned to death on that bed. Did you know that? Right here in your room. And, she died an agonizing death. Ooh. Well, there's that one peg. And the second peg is the housekeeping staff has always said they hear moaning and gurgling sounds of blood coming out of her neck. Oh, that's the legend. And then the third peg would be a personal experience that I can, not necessarily my own, but someone who says, oh, yes, I have been in that room and I've heard those sounds. And I have seen the woman, agonized body lying on that bed or walking, across the floor or something like that. If I see it and feel it, so much the better. But if someone else tells me, that's fine. That becomes the story, and then it's up to the reader to decide whether I or that individual is worth considering as fact, what they said.
What I find is fascinating about this, anyone who's seen Charlie tell his stories and be on stage and everything, they get the idea that you're kind of telling a lot of this tongue-in-cheek. You're kind of making fun of some of this, and having a lot of fun with it.
How can you not? Let's face it, Mark. I mean, really.
But, to sit here and talk to you now, I mean, and I've known this for a while. You're a serious investigator.
I really am. You know, I mean, deep down inside, but I'm also, you know, I got a little bit of that Irish thing going on, so, you know, you tend to send out a little blarney here and there. And also you just, I appreciate that old-fashioned sort of art of storytelling and setting a mood. And to do that, you can't just be a boring, technical speaker.
I agree.
You must embellish. You must provide some laughs, and you must, with an audience, the audiences I attract now, they're different. I mean, the Ghost World Conference, as opposed to a civic club or an event during my Halloween season, a little different. These people are a little different level. Ghost World Conference or any of these paranormal conferences. So I'll be a little bit more serious about my own presentation. And yet, I think I'm treated sort of as a class clown. You know, here comes the funny guy with a cape, the old guy with a cape and a hat, and let's see what he has to offer. And hopefully I'll leave him laughing a little bit, but also saying, you know, some of the stuff he said there was kind of interesting.
There's always that kernel of seriousness, though. I mean, you know, your stories, the way you present them, you might get people to laugh, but you're also getting people to say, by golly, I got to think about that a little
That's
bit.
what I try to do.
So.
There's nothing more horrible than 45 minutes of someone being morose, you know.
That's true.
I know you want to get into the scientific aspects of this and what you do. I wanted to ask you a few questions about your psychic abilities.
Okay. Limited.
Do you consider yourself a sensitive or a medium, or do you not count that at all?
I am sensitive. I will never say I am asensitive. No, I'm just sensitive. At varying levels. I can, you know, I certainly turn it on and off. I don't walk around all day. Well, I am today dressed in all black, but I don't walk around like, waiting for things to happen. But when I'm researching, when I'm in the writing and researching mode, oh yeah, I will be. But I can even do that behind a mask of the buffoon, you know, which is fine with me. I can go to a place, because we're speaking right now, but that sixth sense, I'm looking at you with the eyes, we're talking the sound, and I'm feeling, I'm sensing, but that sixth sense, which I believe we all have, is doing something too, you know, and you're not even seeing that, but I'm feeling it. And that happens quite a bit. And that can be distracting to myself and to whomever I'm speaking to. Several times I've been caught up when I'm actually telling or leading a ghost tour, particularly when something is happening, and it works well though, because my sensitivity is kicking in, and I'll be actually distracted by something, and I'm speaking. Once upon a time there was a ghost, and the ghost's name was Bill, but then I start to babble a little bit, perhaps because something's happening. That sixth sense is working. Then I must kind of backtrack a little bit and then explain to them something is happening here, and it's not for effect. It's because something is indeed happening.
Right.
But that works well for the storyteller if that other element does indeed kick in, and it does. Yeah. And I'll tell a story later on during this conference that just happened this week. That was, to me, as a collector and a reteller of ghost stories, is a classic. It will become, to me at least, a classic. And it had every element that I was just talking about. You know.
That's funny that you mentioned that. I was doing a lecture at Needwood Estate, and I was trying to be very focused, and I kept hearing, "Get out," coming from behind me, and didn't want to concern anybody, but my mind was kind of going different places. I was stuttering a little bit. This was all being taped, so afterwards they were playing back the tape, and sure enough, "Get out."
Really?
You could hear
it.
Oh my.
Well, that's good. You kept on focus there. You know, kept on. I guess it would be pretty bad. The worst thing, I guess, if you're hearing that and you turn around, excuse me, no, go away. You know, then they might treat you as someone. This is a wacko. At least you just kept it to yourself there.
Carol and Mark laugh at me because I talk out loud to spirits so that they can understand my conversation.
Laine will be talking to us, and all of a sudden she'll stop, and you'll see her tilt her head and kind of look behind her, and we're like, okay, what's up? She goes, there's a guy standing over there.
Yeah.
You know, I don't have any of that. Unfortunately, I think
Mark,
I'm very happy to where
you do have it. You do have it.
People keep
it's
telling me
latent,
that.
I think. No, I believe it's there, but you're just rejecting it.
An example of that is the great EVP you get.
Yeah, that's true. I do
Yeah.
get I do get pretty good EVP, which may be that may be my thing. You know, other people and
Yeah,
you can verify
that's
this
very true.
or tell me I'm crazy, but I think we all have our individual strengths in terms of either being able to take photographs or being able to intuit things like you two can. And maybe mine is getting maybe I'm channeling the spirits or
Yeah,
energies or whatever.
that's what I said. I think it's a latent ability. You have the energy. You have the ability to bring in that energy, and in your way communicate with it. But just as with my first experience, I never watched Casper as a kid. I couldn't have cared less about ghosts. Had no interest whatsoever in ghosts. I would have rejected. Had someone like you, a psychic, come up and said, after I told that story to them, that's because the spirits are here. You boo, woo, woo. I was like, get out of here. I would have walked away. But when the chaplain, a religious man of the cloth, not only tells me the stories, but shows me vivid evidence, of it, then it made me wonder. I would just shun. At that time, I would have shunned someone who would have just explained it as a psychic sense. You see dead people. No, I would have just laughed. I would have scoffed at that. But because of the situation and the circumstances and the location of the setting for all of this, I believed right away, and that's what really jump-started me.
Yeah.
And it's going to happen to you, too,
Oh,
Nesbitt.
great.
Oh, yeah, when you least expect it.
Oh, I can't wait. Okay, writer, your first book, which one was it, Charlie, and when did you write that?
My first book was Ghost Stories of Berks County. I wrote it in the Gutenberg era, and 1982, I guess it was, or 80, I don't know. But literally, it was still in the typed manuscript era.
Oh, yeah.
And send to the printer, and then the printer, in my case, I got the cheapest printer I could find, who actually had to bind a dozen books at the same time. I actually helped glue the bindings and fold the covers over the bindings, and he screwed them together in a wooden block, and we had to let the dozen books dry for a few hours, and he would do a couple hundred a day. And I thought, I didn't know any better, no one really knew any better. This was a good, cheap, and in retrospect, great way to break in. Because unlike what I'm doing now, what everybody else is doing now, people can publish online. That's no fun.
Right.
Let me take you back to those days. I feel like one of those old farts now, a dinosaur, but those were fun days.
Oh, yeah.
And I've gone through that straight through to the first computers, to the Selectric typewriters where you can justify the margins. Oh, my goodness. Isn't this amazing? To the Franklin computer, my second book done on a Franklin computer, which took up my bathroom, basically, the space the size of my bathroom, and the lines were all the letters were all in little soldier lines. They weren't, and really crude looking. To the Macintosh of today, that as you write the book, you're setting the type.
Right.
Astounding.
It's amazing.
Absolutely astounding. So that first book is a sentimental favorite, but. And people who have it, this is one of the first you ever did. How do you know? It's because when I opened it, it fell apart because the glue dried up and so the books fall apart. So.
I love reading an author's first book.
Oh, yeah.
It tells a lot about them. They can take their time to write it. They don't have the pressure from the publishers to meet deadlines.
Yeah. And I've been lucky because I classic self-publishing, but I have a partner who does all the marketing and the distribution. He worries about all of that. I worry about it, but he actually does all of that. So it's pretty neat that it's a very unique partnership. Exeter House Books is two guys. Well, three with Mr. Macintosh, as I always say.
That's great.
Yeah.
I love my Mac.
Oh, yeah.
Couldn't do without it.
Yep.
Well, that's a good way to do it, too, because I think some writers don't get the idea that these books, how hard it is to market.
Oh, they don't have
And how much work it takes.
Right.
You're out on the circuit all the time. When you go
Sure.
out to speak, you do the same as I do. You look at it. This is an opportunity, to present my book and to sell some books out there and, to get my name out a little bit. And that's all part of it. A lot of writers don't understand that.
It is. And you as I, though, too, we're not total whores. We also love doing it.
Yes.
And
Well, speak for yourself.
yeah. but my partner, Dave Seibel, and it's like a snake oil salesman and a preacher, who used to come to town. I come and I preach and, save yourself, and then when I'm done preaching, and now buy my stuff,
Yeah.
buy my elixir, my potion,
Uh-huh.
and here's my day. So I'm the dog, he's the pony, or I'm the preacher and and then we pack up and we go to the next town. But even that has a certain charm to it.
Oh, absolutely.
I love October, that every day and every night we're a different town, different meeting, and I love it. And I love the adulation. I mean, not that I'm adored, but I love going in there and saying, oh man, as soon as I walk in with that cape, wow, this guy's for real. We don't get this normally. We get some guy talking about, steel making or something like that, or some woman talking about quilting. Here's a guy who's telling us ghost stories, and I like that. And when I leave and there's dead silence in the room before they applaud, hopefully, because they've been stunned by whatever I said, that is so cool.
Oh, it's great.
And then when they buy the books afterwards, even cooler.
Yeah.
But I'm not in it anymore. 35 years again. It's the book sales are great. I mean, they're fabulous. But now I just love the storytelling.
We have to break for a word from our sponsor, but we'll be right back.
Experience Gettysburg's only bed and breakfast located right on the national battlefield. Situated on the site of the fierce fighting of July 1st, 1863, today the Doubleday Inn serves as your oasis of peace on the Gettysburg battlefield. Enjoy the peaceful ambiance, attention to detail, and exceptional customer service that have made us Gettysburg's premier lodging destination. Hosting discerning travelers for more than 20 years, the Doubleday Inn features 9 guest rooms with private baths, each decorated in unique country fashion with Civil War accents and antiques. Enjoy all the comforts of home, including candlelit country breakfasts, tea and cookies each afternoon, central air, Wi-Fi access throughout, and panoramic battlefield views from every window. Is the Doubleday Inn haunted? Well, our guests tell hundreds of stories, and we invite you to come investigate for yourself. We're located directly across from Iverson's Pit, site of one of the original Gettysburg ghost stories. History and hospitality await at the Doubleday Inn. Visit doubledayinn.com for photos, descriptions, rates, and availability. Don't miss your chance to sleep on the battlefield tonight.
Welcome back. Mark?
At Stokesay Mansion, you invited me up there to give a talk, and I'll tell you, that was one of the most successful signings I've ever had. We sold a ton of books, so first of all, I want to thank you for that. But the other interesting thing is afterwards we sat down and had a beer or two, and you told me about an experiment that you did with maps. Could you explain that?
Yeah, it was experiment's one word. In my county of Berks, I started collecting, my first 3 books were ghost stories of Berks County. Obviously 3 books, there's a lot of ghost stories there. And I started to kind of chart mentally the different places I would retrieve the ghost stories from. And I realized the Ole Valley, the East Penn Valley, leading up into Hawk Mountain, down into Daniel Boone Homestead area. It's like a swath of ghost stories in this particular area. And mentally, because I've always been a real homie, I love the Berks County, and I know a lot about it. Always done a lot of reading and studying about it. Wait a second. A lot of that area is where the old furnaces used to be, the old iron ore furnaces. And I did first a mental plotting of this. Then I did an actual, took a Berks County map and pinpointed all the locations of the places I wrote about that have hauntings. Some just in legend, some in folklore, and some, many, in actual people's having experiences with stories. I literally got a clear plastic overlay of the iron ore deposits in Berks County, and it was freaky because the stories were, many of them, there were many more outside, but they were within the sort of the bounds of the iron ore deposit area of Berks County, which again made me wonder about that. Why? And then, well, why not? Iron ore, a mineral,
Sure.
with certain magnetic powers or magnetic attributes. Maybe it's something as simple as that. Maybe all of this is something as simple as that. That minerals in our soil, or something in our environment, retains this energy that we call ghosts.
Yeah.
Now that was even more pronounced in the last couple of years. 2 books ago was Coal Country Ghost Stories in Schuylkill and Carbon counties, Pennsylvania. So the lower anthracite region of Pennsylvania. And they're, again, a swath from, say, Shenandoah and St. Clair, Pottsville, up to Jim Thorpe in Carbon County. The ghost stories fall in a pattern which is, again, very hauntingly similar to the pattern of the coal deposits. And within those coal deposits, I don't know that much about it, but many other minerals that have certain properties that may retain these energies that we again call ghosts. My latest book is Luzerne and Lackawanna counties, the upper anthracite fields of Pennsylvania. Again, same thing. The Wyoming Valley and the Lackawanna valleys up there in the northeastern part of the state, again, to an extraordinary extent, have very powerful energies that have been felt and heard and seen and smelled by generations of people, as if they're being held captive there by some sort of internal energy, such as, again, could be coal, could be zinc, could be, what do we have, the wristwatches are quartz.
Quartz, sure.
Quartz may have properties, too, that retain these energies.
Well, see, that's, your observations became kind of like a linchpin for a theory that I'm kind of developing, which is the environmental theory, that the environment has a lot to do with especially residual hauntings. In other words,
Right, exactly.
Ones that replay themselves over like a video or a DVD or whatever. And because I found that same thing in Gettysburg. You know, some of the places that have the high amount of, we have a lot of granite and a lot of quartz-bearing granite in this area.
Like in the vault at the Gettysburg Hotel.
Exactly. So, my theory, which was helped by the work you've done, is that at least one of the reasons that ghosts remain in one place because of the environment, the geology. It could be something as simple as that.
Yep.
And I mean, it makes sense, especially with the iron ore, because EVP really didn't start until the invention of electromagnetic tape.
Exactly. Yeah.
And we do know that there is some sort of electromagnetic quality to whatever energy this is, if it's spirit energy or this unknown energy that we're dealing with. So that, I think that's a fascinating examination that you did and conclusions you came to.
I have to ask you, did you look at the population around these areas? Is
I
there
was
higher
cognizant of it.
population? And
It really didn't matter because even in the populated areas such as the Luzerne and Lackawanna counties, which is Scranton, Wilkes-Barre, it's just town and city after town and city up there, 500,000 people strong, highly populated. But as you know, for example, the 40 Fort in the town of 40 Fort, Pennsylvania, there's a couple of real hot spots up there that have residual hauntings that have been there since the French and Indian War, 1760s. So they've been there and they've been felt innocently by generations who, as I innocently was treated to that show on the Essex, people have been treated to these paranormal shows over the generations. And as you know, in one particular place, for example, in Kingston, Pennsylvania, blood was spilled, as it was in Gettysburg and Antietam and places like that, during the French and Indian War. Fine, a couple generations later, they had to start building. They couldn't just revere this land and just because there was a small skirmish, bloody skirmish, but small, relatively. So they built something on it, but then again, they built a house. Ooh, this house is haunted. By what? We don't know. Well, perhaps, again, retained in that soil or in those minerals in that soil are the energies of that, battle, that skirmish. And that house was torn down, let's say 6 generations later, an office building put up. We're having strange things happening here. We don't know why, but, well, I do know why, and Mark would know why. And anyone who studies these things beyond just the beep beep and the geek stuff, you do know why, because that something is keeping that energy there imprisoned forever.
or maybe the iron ore as a result
Could
of
be.
all the ghosts.
You never know. But I'm fascinated by all of this. I work in radio all my life too, 30 years, and I've always been fascinated that whatever I say, whatever anyone ever said on radio and television, is still out there. It is still going out there. We're not looking for life on other planets with a telescope anymore. That's silly. We're listening for life on other planets, signs of life on other planets through electronics, through sound that we can't see, we can't feel, we can't retrieve in any other way than, a receiver, electronic receiver. And that's part of my talk too. In recent years, I'm fascinated by, I make a cell phone call. If I make a call to Mark right now, my voice goes through your body to Mark. How? Or does it? Does it go to a satellite and then come down 50,000 miles total in no seconds? I mean, how does this work? We don't know. And till I die, I don't want to know. The same with all of this stuff with is it really just iron ore that retains this energy? I don't really want to know. I just want to tell the stories and make people wonder.
But that's such a good point.
Until I die and they die, until civilization, because we have so many questions that have been answered. I want all of this ghost stuff to never be answered. I never want a resolution to it, as long as I'm alive. I still want to hear and tell a damn good ghost story and not say, well, that's easily explained. No. It's never going to be explained, I hope.
Well, so mentioning the cell phones and the electronics, I mean, there are people who don't believe in telepathy, but it's really kind of the same thing.
Right.
It's just
Absolutely.
our minds are a machine.
Absolutely.
Well, the other thing is, Charlie, also if they discover exactly what this is, I mean, I'll be looking for another job.
Yeah, that too. I have to work for a living.
Oh, heaven forbid.
How do you document your findings?
Just in final story form. I don't think I have to document them because I don't pretend to be a documentarian. I pretend to be a storyteller, if nothing else. I mean, so basically I just, again, let the reader decide, I read that thing, he's full of crap, or they're full of crap, the people who told me the story. But I never really attempt to document any. If there's historical documentation, yeah, certainly. Oh yeah, that I'll make every effort to do that. But sometimes there just isn't, and that gets me in trouble. And it gets maybe, I don't know, Mark, if you've had this experience, but one of the recent stories I did in Luzerne and Lackawanna book, the West Mountain Sanitarium in near Scranton. You go all over the web, and that place is one of the wildest, most haunted places in the world. That and that's a place. One website said that 100 people were killed, or hundreds were killed in a fire there. Okay, fine. You read that, and every next website just copies that story, and it keeps spinning around and spinning around. You go there, you do the actual research, you go to the headlines of that fire, nobody was killed. Not one person was ever killed by tragedy of that nature at that sanitarium. All of a sudden now, when I do a book of Luzerne and Lackawanna counties, if I don't include West Mountain Sanitarium in my book, well, what does he know? Everybody knows hundreds of people were killed there, and it's the most haunted place in the world.
Right.
So my story is that, well, here's the West Mountain Sanitarium story. I got some news for you, folks. It may be haunted, but hundreds of people were not killed. There's another place, there's the Gordon Hotel. I actually went, look at the websites, I won't mention them, but there are those out there that rhyme with pato bands, Shadowlands. That they'll just, it's just the, they'll just throw things up there. And one of the hotels, I think it's the Gordon Hotel.
I'm guilty of reading.
Well, I am too, obviously. But, it's 30 people were killed there and 6 people. But do not go there. The police patrol it. And do not go at night because the police will patrol it and they will get you. On and on and on. I went to the Carbondale police station. Said, I'm intrigued by this one place, the Gordon Hotel. It said that I shouldn't go there at night. I want to let you know that I might go there if it gets dark. He said, okay. He says, hell yeah, I'll buy you a beer there. I said, I thought it was closed. No. Well, and he punched up Shadowlands and a whole story about don't go there and don't trespass. It's private property. As if it's a closed, spooky, haunted hotel. Ooh. No, and he laughs. He says, well, it says the cops patrol there regularly. Yeah, because after the shift we go there and have a beer. If that's patrolling there regularly, the place is still wide open. So I went there. I told the guy, introduce myself. I'm Charlie Adams. I do books on ghost stories. Get the hell out of here. I said, well, wait. I have a question for you. I don't want to talk about that crap. I don't know who you people are. I said, I'm not one of them. I just want to know the truth. What's going on here? I read about this. He says, I don't know either. He says, we had some incidents here over the years that are documented, deaths, and people say it's haunted, and people have come in here experience things. All of a sudden, we got like 30 people murdered here. No, some people died natural deaths here. And so that's the dangerous part of all of this. dangerous not only to that business, but to us as Mark and I. Again, I don't want to treat you like you're not a dinosaur yet, but we people such as I who try to maintain a level of credibility through our work, and sometimes it gets undermined by less credible people. Not that they're trying to, but they'll just accept something at face value, do no documentation at all. Never think of calling the Gordon Hotel and say, I've heard all this. Well, no. Okay, because they're going to lose an entry in their website.
Right.
West Mountain Sanitarium, too much work to actually go there and do the grunt work, and dig out the facts.
But then that's also, I think, the nature of a ghost story. They seem to grow by themselves.
Sure.
That's one of the criteria that I use when someone comes to me and tells me a ghost story that happened to them at Gettysburg. I'll ask them, okay, I'm not going to remember this, so write it down.
Yeah.
So I'll get it, and then I'll call them up usually and say, okay, can you tell me that story again? And my criteria is if that story hasn't changed at all, then it's probably true. Because
Here. I do the same thing. Yep.
Those things are embedded in your mind. And but if all of a sudden the second time I hear it, now there are two ghosts, and third time you hear it, then 20 people were killed, and all of a sudden, because you know how we are as human beings, and especially Americans, we're known for our ability to tell tall tales and create things. So that
I'm the same way, and people will wonder. I have to apologize, kind of nicely. I didn't get back to you for a while because I'm letting it simmer a little bit.
Yes.
And as you say, you're just waiting and see if it changes and mutates a little bit.
Yeah.
And I'm exactly the same way. But then again, it's the nature of a ghost story, as you said. Yeah. Nothing wrong with that at all. If one of my stories, I consider it flattering. If someone takes one of my stories and really lets it just grow like Topsy and become something it isn't. But then if I have the opportunity to tame them down, I do. But or sometimes I don't. I'll just let them. Wow, really? I didn't know that. Because there's classic examples of those when I know I did the first story about a particular, broke ground and did the very first story, and then again 20 years later, some little 10-year-old comes up, Mr. Adams, do you know about Lizzie's house where that girl got killed by her mother? They cut her head off and they buried it in the basement. I said, you mean Lizzie's down in Lincoln Road? Yeah. Well, Lizzie was a woman named Elizabeth who died she fell down the stairs, and her ghost haunts the staircase. It opens and closes cabinet doors. But to them, it becomes this house of hell. And you've seen that. And you ever see adaptations, too, Mark, of some of the work we've done on television, where I've actually been told, one of the networks had me, I had an experience in a firehouse in New York City, and they wanted me to recreate it. So I started recreating it. Well, we can't do it that way, because I can't film you taping going up the staircase. So come down the staircase. I said, exactly how am I going to explain that I kept seeing feet in front of me going up the stairs until I got to the second floor if I'm coming down? Figure it out somehow. I said, no, I won't do it because that's not what happened. I'm pretty, I'm a stickler for that sort of thing. Knowing that if the people involved in that fire station and their families who know the story and people who have read my book and read the story, well, that's not what he said in the story. This guy must be full of crap. So I do have, I try to, at least in television, as you probably both were shaking your head, sometimes has to do that to embellish.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that part I don't like, the technical, convenient embellishment. The embellishment, again, when the story goes from story to legend to folklore to myth, nothing wrong with that. But Davy Crockett never killed a bar when he was only 3.
Right.
I think that's an interesting commentary on how people perceive ghosts.
Yeah.
That they don't understand they're not necessarily location specific, and they're just people without bodies. And my kids, they see them and they say, oh, Mommy, there's so-and-so, or there's the guy standing, and it doesn't scare them because I've never told them it should be scary.
Right. Well, one of the things I always, when people ask me about, what's your favorite ghost movie? And I tell them Field of Dreams, believe it or not, because it melds baseball and ghosts, my two passions in life, but also The Others, which I think is a good movie that explains quite vividly in the end that, as you say, they're people without bodies. They're here, and we're here, and they're wondering, why are you here? And we're wondering, why are you here? And it's a little standoff, psychic standoff every once in a while.
Psychic standoff. That's good.
You can quote me on that. You can use
Okay.
that in your
Good
next
name
quote.
for a show.
Yeah.
Yeah, it would be.
Yeah. There you
You
go.
hear this, folks? We have a new show coming up. Stay tuned for Psychic Standoff.
No, but I was working with a producer for a cable show that I ended up not doing because she said, well, if it happened this way, then we could use it. And I said, the problem was everything was very, very scary if you didn't know what was going on.
Yeah.
But, there's a little girl turning over stuff. It's
Yep.
just not that scary. when
You know, to me, sometimes the best ghost stories are not necessarily the scariest ghost stories. So I might tell a story that to me I'm impassioned about, and I can see sometimes the audience is saying, so, who cares? This is boring now. So that's when I myself have to beef it up a little bit, and I faced that a couple times. My ghost story in the ship, that's not too exciting. But what I try then to tell the audience is imagine yourself in my place. That's where it hits home. And if you do that effectively, I'll tell you a story, a very simple story. Woman died in a bed, and her ghost rises from that bed and walks into the bathroom every night. Yawn City. Who cares? But then I can see the audience like, okay, fine, that's good. They're shuffling around. Then I say, can you imagine you being in that room late at night by yourself, and you see rising from the bed? Then I can see the goosebumps.
Oh, yeah.
I can hear the goosebumps popping.
I'm getting them right now. If I'm trying
Yeah. Then you
great,
start to
Charlie,
hear the
sure.
goosebumps popping off the flesh, And then you do that little trick where you just look in their eyes. Take one person, look in their eyes, and look just over their shoulder. And they go crazy. And that's the essence of storytelling and mood setting.
Right.
That has to happen. So, because as you say, some of these stories are so simple that they're TV producers, they don't want that. First story that was ever adapted, my story was that Unsolved Mysteries. The story was the witnesses said that one of the individuals just they felt as if he was rising off the floor, levitating maybe an inch or two off the floor, and just rising, and that's kind of creepy in and of itself. By the time it made it to television, this guy was like 6 inches off the floor and boom across the the other end of the room. Never happened that way. And we all kind of gathered around, my kids, my family and stuff. Charlie's story's going to be on Unsolved Mysteries. So we're watching it. Okay, cool, this is going to be great. Here it is, and the story goes on and on. I'm thinking, and they're thinking, you didn't write this. This isn't your story. I said, well, it is, but they certainly did enhance it, in quotes. Because they had to. They felt they had to.
I get that all the time, and
Yeah.
you do too, I'm sure, how people say, well, tell me the scariest thing that ever happened to you.
Oh, yeah.
And I say, well, it's, the scariest thing for me is like I'm afraid I'm going to fall through an old rotten floor.
Yeah.
When I'm doing it.
Or spiders. That's the scariest thing for me. I'll see we're staying up on your second floor up there by myself one night. And,
Yeah. But, the stories for the most part are scary because of Hollywood.
Absolutely.
Dangerous. I only have one or two out of 1,000 stories I've collected, one or two where somebody actually got hurt. Mm-hmm. And people maybe are a little disappointed in that.
They are. I think some people are.
Yeah.
I think again, if they do dig beyond or see beyond, that sensationalism element, hopefully they'll respect the texture of the story.
Right. Well, do you want to? I know you're going to reveal that first, that one story you were talking about.
Yeah.
Here, would you like to
Yeah,
tell
we can
it
talk
on
about.
Oh, I'd love that. Did you say it's your favorite story?
No, it's just my most recent. It just happened 2 days ago.
Okay. Oh.
But it has nothing to do with a ghost, necessarily. It has something to do with perceptions and with this whole. It's sort of a developing ghost story as such, but to me, it's the very essence of all of this. It's when that sweet innocence, that psychic innocence that Mark still has, and that I once had, this sweet innocence where you're still waiting for something to happen. Maybe you want it to happen or you don't want it to happen, either way, but something then happens that just shakes the very roots of your belief system and your whole thoughts about the supernatural.
Hold on to that thought, Charlie. We have to break for just a moment, and we'll be right back.
In Gettysburg, Pennsylvania, you too can experience things that go bump in the night with the Ghosts of Gettysburg Candlelight Walking Tours. Started in 1994 by author and historian Mark Nesbitt, the Ghosts of Gettysburg offers 4 different walking tours, a ghost bus tour, and now a ghost train. These are the only ghost tours in this historic town based on Mark Nesbitt's Ghosts of Gettysburg book series. Armed with tales from Mark's books and even a few that have yet to be published, guides dressed in period attire will escort you through sections of town that were witness to horrific suffering during the infamous Battle of Gettysburg. Follow your guides to the old Pennsylvania College campus, where the dead once lay in rows and the wounded suffered horribly while waiting to inevitably join their deceased comrades. See local cemeteries where not everyone is said to rest in peace, and experience a town that may very well be, acre for acre, the most haunted place in America. Voted the #1 ghost tour in the country by readers of HauntedAmericaTours.com. Ghosts of Gettysburg Candlelight Walking Tours. Visit ghostsofgettysburg.com for tour information.
Now we're back for your story, Charlie.
Good friend of mine, 2 weeks ago, I was in Nashville or someplace, and I got an email from him. His father died. That's terrible. I knew his father. And I felt, oh, God, I can't get back, but okay, Butch, my thoughts are with you. And I was quite saddened by that. There's that emotional thing. I still am touched by it. Felt for my friend and, of course, for his loss, and knew his father well. It was terrible. So that's that real human element that I think is so important in all of this. Never lose that. I got home, and we had a meeting. I work with a fellow, and he's a sales manager where I work. And he says, Charlie, I got to tell you something. When Dad died, a story. I said, what? So I don't believe in all this ghost stuff. You know that. I said, I do. But I have a feeling you're going to tell me something. He says, no, it's not a ghost story. I never, ever treat it as a ghost story. Okay, what happened? Well, he said the week before his father died, he got a call. We went to visit his father, and his father said, could you change the light bulb in the one room? I can't reach it, and he's old and, couldn't get up on a ladder to do it. And Butch said, yeah, you do it. So he changed the light bulb. And Father said, while you're at it, you might as well change the one in the hallway, too. He says, well, it's fine. Yeah, it's going to burn out next week, Wednesday. He said, oh, you know it's going to burn out on Wednesday. Absolutely. And they kidded around about it, just joking around, father to son, never giving us any thoughts other than, you're nuts, Dad, But so he got to the point where he says, oh, you want to put some money on that or something like that? He says, yeah. Wednesday, it's going to burn out. You come back, visit me next Wednesday, it's going to be burned out. All right, so he put a little Post-it note on the refrigerator. Check hallway light Wednesday, burn out, and his father signed it, kidding around about all of this. And that was it. Well, you can probably telegraph what's going to happen here. But when that following Wednesday, he got a call from his stepmother and said, your father's not breathing and in the morning. So he went there, and he was greeted by his stepmother and says, Dad's just not breathing. I think he's gone. And of course, he's crestfallen. He's stunned and staggered by all this. Okay, where is he? He's up in his bedroom. He went up the stairs. He flicked on the light in the hallway upstairs, and it popped. It was Wednesday of the week. As he told me this story, and there was 2 other witnesses, the manager of our radio station and our program director were sitting in the little conference room just 2 days ago, as he was telling me that story, and we are stunned, and we're silent about this light that popped as predicted the day his father died. A light in our conference room went out over his head. And we all oh my. And he, never before, he would have scoffed at that before. This is crap, just coincidence. All of a sudden, I could see him looking skyward. And at first, that mask came on. I don't believe any of this stuff, but damn it, this is getting kind of close. And I could see him looking up, and then he says, Pop, knock it off. All of a sudden, it wasn't just this heaven and hell thing, Daddy ascended to heaven, and knock it off, kidding around. Later on then, the next day, I said, Butch, that whole thing with that light, I could get 10 pages out of that. I really could, as a ghost story. And I'm going to tell that story if you don't mind. It's a bunch of names or anything, but he said, no. I said, because what happened there, maybe the stuff you've been talking about all these years, maybe it's real. Maybe that was that energy you keep talking about that was getting into that light. As soon as I came into that room, that was him saying, goodbye. Is that a ghost story? No. Is somebody going to make a movie about that? No. But again, imagine that happening to you. It's a real human being. There's several human beings involved with life and death and life. Again, to me, that becomes now my current favorite ghost story, only because it's fresh kill.
What's your favorite place to investigate?
The next place.
bet.
I really. Jamaica Inn in Cornwall, England, on the moors of England, has everything going for it. The moors, Cornwall, and it had some pretty neat experiences there. But really, honestly it sounds cliched. It sounds like, ha, but the next place I go is going to be my favorite place because I'm waiting for the next thing to happen. And
let me ask you this, Charlie, because you've done something that I haven't had an opportunity to do, and I admire you for. You've gotten a chance to go over to England, Scotland, and Europe, and you've been able to look at their ghost stories.
Oh, sure.
Are there any fundamental differences between the way we perceive ghosts, or the way ghosts treat us, as opposed to the way the ghosts treat people from other countries?
Yeah, in certain cultures there are. Of course, the Irish, have their own traditions, and all of the UK. But in many countries of Europe, I was in Spain and Portugal last year, and now I'm there to do. I also am a travel writer, so I'm there to do travel stories and vacate. I'm on vacation, but invariably I'll ask, anybody ghost stories and things. And in countries such as those, and in Italy, religion plays a large part of it because they are so Catholic. And either they don't believe in ghosts at all, they don't want to believe in ghost stories, or they believe in the Father, the Son, and the Holy Ghost, and that's it. But the traditions, the legends are always there. Underlying all of that are those ghost stories that are talked about quietly. Other countries, such as the UK, countries in England, Scotland, Wales, Ireland, they just wear them on their sleeve there. It's part of their culture. It's part of their tourism base as well, to a certain degree. I'm going to Norway next week. I leave Monday for Norway for a couple of weeks, and Iceland. And the sagas of Iceland and Norway and Scandinavia are deeply rooted in their culture. And I'm particularly fascinated there in Norway is one of the roots of the Walpurgisnacht, which is the halfway to Halloween day of March, April 30th. It's one of the pivotal days in the calendar for paranormal, so to speak. And to me, it's more important than Halloween ever will be. And one of the roots of Walpurgisnacht, a German and Eastern European tradition, is in Scandinavia, particularly Norway, with Saint Valborga, who was kind of a guardian of the mountains. And I can't wait to get in the Hall of the Mountain King, and where Saint Valborga actually walked, and where trolls live on the bridges, and as you go over a bridge, even automobile bridges, you might be accosted by a troll. I can't wait to get in that, and I can't wait to sit in a little inn by a fjord, and wait for a troll to come by. It's never going to happen, but you never know. This way is in Ireland. You can't help if you're going to Yates country up into Sligo, County Sligo, and into Galway, and Yates country. You ever read The Celtic Twilight, my favorite book ever? And you ever read that? You're just going to sit there waiting for the little people. I went to Yates's grave, and I said, one of the caretakers of the graveyard was there, and standing by Yates's grave, were you a Yates fan? Were you a reader? Were you? I said, yeah, absolutely. He says, you know where the gateway is? I said, I think I do, over there by the little knoll, by the tree. I said, is that it? He says, let's go. I said, it's a gateway to the underworld, to the little people. It's a little opening of a kind of a cave there, that you or I could slip into. There's a little bit of a cave, and that, he says, and Yates wrote, that's one of the gateways to the underworld, where the little people live. The little people we call leprechauns,
Sure.
And to me, that's so cool. I mean, I'm sitting there, and I'm standing by the gateway. Now, again, I could wait there till time ended, and no leprechaun's ever going to, here I am. Now do you believe? Hey, see the rainbow? It's not going to happen. The same way in the Hall of the Mountain King. No troll will accost me. Mm-hmm. Or will it? That's why I go.
That's right.
It's that sense of adventure, as going back to the beginning of this whole thing, ghost adventuring. And I'm giving a little talk on haunted traveling, and the theme of it will be, don't take a ghost tour, make a ghost tour. And as you well know, Mark.
Excellent, yeah.
Well, one thing I've always been interested in knowing, with battlefields all around Gettysburg and where I live in Maryland, and pretty recent, last 150 years or so, I've never been on an ancient battlefield.
Oh my, yeah.
Is it still just as paranormal?
Oh, certainly. Don't get me with the names, but if you've ever seen Braveheart, the battlefield in front of Stirling Castle, which has a fancy name, Ballyrock or something like that.
Brannockburn?
Brannockburn, yeah,
Brannockburn?
exactly,
Okay.
yeah.
I wasn't sure.
And the pathway sort of to Stirling throughout that era is soaked with blood and soaked with energy, absolutely. And the Scots revere that for its. The word paranormal is not to be used in that culture. It's normal, you know. And I don't use the word paranormal. I cringe at that. The word supernatural. Well, as I explained it with Yeats's grave and the doorway to the gateway to the underworld, it's not supernatural to them. It's natural.
Right.
You know, and I'd like to subscribe to that way of life, that way of thinking.
Sure.
That it's not the word paranormal just gives me the willies.
And they have centuries before them.
Oh, they do.
So
Absolutely.
they have lots of spirits or lots of ghosts where we don't have.
And you mentioned, Mark, about the different way they treat ghosts in Europe. The beaches of just beyond the beaches of Normandy and St. Mary-Glise and some other towns, Caen and some other towns that were on the path from the Normandy landings to Berlin are rife with ghost stories from World War II. And they aren't treated as spooky, creepy ghost stories. They're very real hauntings, you know. And it's not paranormal. It's just fact. It's normal. You know,
And that's a great misconception of it, especially, maybe because of the ghost books that I write or you write, that, we have a tendency to think, well, obviously the only ghosts that were spawned were from the American Civil War or from the cold country or whatever. Ghosts have been going on almost the entire human history, certainly the written history of the human beings.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, Shakespeare.
Oh, absolutely.
Right, in the Bible.
Well, the Bible, every great piece of literature is rooted, or has some roots in questions and ghostly questions. Absolutely,
Yeah.
without a doubt. And that's why I find it funny when people decry all of this and say, I don't believe in any of that stuff. Well, you're among the minority, really.
And mostly Americans do.
Yeah, true too.
Because, like you said, you go to Europe. Oh, it's normal. It's not paranormal. It's normal.
Absolutely. And I've gone in pretty intensive trips into the Bedouins with Negev Desert in Israel, and I've talked to them about their beliefs, their sets of beliefs, and there again it becomes religious. There then it is not at all paranormal to them. It is absolutely normal because it's the base of their religion, belief in, acceptance of what we call the paranormal or the supernatural, what they call just the natural.
We were over at the Gettysburg train depot, where they keep all the railroad cars. Right. And we went in, and I couldn't breathe in there. I said, there's something that went on with that train. And they assured me that the train had never been in a wreck. Nothing had happened. Nobody died on the train. And I just kept saying, something happened there. So Carol took me around the building to see if it was part of the battle that I felt. Nope, that wasn't it. Sure enough, that train that had sat there for about 20 years before the train that was sitting there today had been in a wreck. And it still had that energy of people suffering, their pain of going through that.
Probably the most, the story that combines ghosts and train wrecks would be in the Lehigh Gorge area, which is obviously a gorge in the Lehigh River. It's well known now for whitewater rafting. It extends into Jim Thorpe is the southernmost, it's where the rafting trips depart from. Maybe 10 miles up the Lehigh, you come down that gorge, and it's a wonderful place to go rafting. And along there is the Lehigh Gorge extension of now the Reading and Northern Railroad. And I don't know the date, but once upon a time, there was a terrible train wreck there. I think 60 people were killed. Most were from a Sunday school group that was coming back from the Poconos to Philadelphia. And again, don't check my facts. It's in one of my books, but as I'm trying to recall here, horrible death, destruction in the gorge. And of course, it took months and months to recover the physical part of all this, to rebuild the train line, the rail lines, and to shore up the rail lines because it had collapsed, and part of it had collapsed into the river. And of course, all the cars collapsed into the river and all the destruction. So it took months and months and months to recover, but they did. And then they resumed the passenger service up through the gorge. And time after time as they did this, and railroads were notorious, and should be, for keeping a timetable, getting from point A to point B from one time to the next, and they had to do this. But invariably, things would happen in that gorge as trains, passenger trains, and even freight trains were passing by. They would be stopped for some mysterious reason. Something, the engine might, these were steam engines at the time, at that time, the steam engines may just sort of boil over at some point. They might overheat, and the train would stop. Most railroad people I found in my research are not very superstitious because they don't want to be they don't have time to be superstitious, and they don't want it to interfere with their timetable. So they wrote it off as just this darn thing. But it happened every time, dozens of times that have been reported over the years, at the precise spot where that energy was deposited by all those deaths of that horrible train wreck. So there again, it's rather, it's more legend than anything else at this point. But I did talk to, even in the diesel era, engineers and other crewmen and women who have actually had experiences there in the gorge. In recent years now, it's become quite a camping, rafting, and it's a state park area now. And some of the state park workers have told me, too, that they've had experiences ranging from just creepy feelings to ghostly, what they describe as ghostly figures, just kind of congregating in that same area where where all those deaths took place. So that's kind of neat. But again, because trained people have never been superstitious, there's not a lot of stories that are retrieved, that I could retrieve.
Which book is that in for our listeners?
It's in Great Train Wrecks of Eastern Pennsylvania.
Okay.
By moi.
And you can get that at
ExeterHouseBooks.com or Amazon or people like that.
You don't call yourself a ghost hunter.
No, I like that ghost adventurer thing. That's my new
I'm sorry, what
ghost
was that?
adventurer.
Okay. What advice do you have for new ghost adventurers?
Get your facts straight. Read. Establish that baseline. Go beyond the emotional to the intellectual, and read about these places. Read about Gettysburg. Not read about the battles. Don't go to the websites and the paranormal websites. Read the books. Go there. Absorb. And that, I think, has always been my philosophy of anything in life, is observe and absorb. You've got to do that before you can write about anything or understand anything or investigate anything. And I think I'm that way to a fault. I do almost too much research into things. I get wrapped up on it. Norway, for example, going to Norway on what should be a pleasure trip, but I'm so wrapped up into trolls, into the legends and the folklore, the Norse folklore. But that makes me, to me, a richer person. I can go there and speak on a certain level with those people that they're going to hopefully say, well, for American, you're not bad. You know your Norse mythology, don't you? I mean, that's good, and I feel good about that. Rather than just going in and say, hey, you got any ghosts here? Or going in there with my electronic equipment and trying to, to ferret out some ghosts in that regard. I will understand what the traditions are, what the legends are, what the folklore is all about, and then go from there, from that broad foundation. And again, get your facts straight. Keep the facts, and that's so important to me. And someone like Mark Nesbitt, he deals. If he doesn't have his facts straight about Gettysburg, he's going to get nailed. Because, and probably has certain unknowingly. So have I. When I think I've got everything nailed, somebody says, I was there. Didn't happen like that. Or you got this number wrong or whatever. Right. So get your facts straight. So important.
But that's really good advice, because for those of us who are around ghosts every day and see ghosts, it's not about the experience of a ghost so much as learning about the history and learning the history from some of the spirits, as a matter of fact.
Well, I was thinking, Charlie, that's not just good advice for people who want to explore the paranormal. That's good advice for someone writing in any field.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
And that's great life advice,
Yeah.
Because the best thing like you said, you're going to Norway. Study the place before you go there. It'll be a much richer experience once you're there. So that's great. Your next book, Charlie, what are you working on now?
The next book may revisit Pennsylvania's coal country in Northumberland and Columbia counties, because this is Bloomsburg and Shamokin areas, Milton, Sunbury areas, which I have found have a lot of stories. It's sort of been left over from my research in Schuylkill, Carbon, Luzerne, and Lackawanna counties. Oh, I don't have a story here, but we got one down in Shamokin you might want. Right. I've been very provincial about my books, and I'd like to use it, but it's in Columbia County, so I can't, for coal country. So I might just do that.
Think you'll ever do anything on, I know you like to go on these trips and vacation, but do you ever think you'll write something on like Norway or?
No. There again, those are locked in my psyche, and those are the things that come out when I tell stories. Or they may come out in the stories, Walpurgisnacht is a prime example. That to me is a Pennsylvania German tradition. Mm-hmm. The vestige of it being an East German or Eastern European and German pure holiday. I mean, not a holiday, but observance, which is still prevalent over there. Here in the United States, the last vestige of it from those settlers who came and brought it with them is in Berks County on Witches Hill, a place called Witches Hill. On Walpurgisnacht, that's where the witches come out and dance. And it's a long, fun story. But because of that, now going to Norway and hearing from the people in those mountains where Walpurga lived, I can then come back on the next Walpurgisnacht in Berks County and say, as they say in Norway, it enriches me and enriches what I talk about, and should I ever write about it again, enriches that. So it all starts to melt together.
Well, thank you so much for being on the show today.
It's been my pleasure.
Yeah, thanks, Charlie.
And thanks to our listeners for listening today to Ghost Talkers on ghostchannel.tv.
The Ghost Channel is your online source for all things paranormal. Ghosts of Gettysburg author Mark Nesbitt and investigative medium Laine Crosby have paired up to bring you ghostly content from their own experiences, as well as from other investigative teams from around the globe. Log on to ghostchannel.tv to check out the variety of paranormal podcasts, documentaries, audiobooks, ghost investigations, paranormal series, and psychic encounters that are added daily. And you won't want to miss the Ghost Talkers radio show, available exclusively as a download on the Ghost Channel and webcast on ghosttalkers.net. This paranormal talk show is co-hosted by Mark Nesbitt and Laine Crosby and includes ghost stories not published in Mark's books, as well as interviews with authors, historians, psychics, and other paranormal investigators. If you are an author or paranormal investigator and are interested in becoming a Ghost Channel affiliate, send an email to programming@ghostchannel.tv, and be sure to visit the Ghost Channel online at www.ghostchannel.tv. The Ghost Channel, it's out of this world.